Welcome to this week's Halacha Shir. The title is Standing for One's Parents, related of course to this week's Parsha, Parshas Yisroi, which has the Aseres HaDibros, and in at number 5 is Kabed es Avicha v'Simecha. So what I would like to explore today is the topic of standing up when parents walk into the room. What exactly is the halacha? It doesn't seem to be so well kept. You don't see it so much nowadays. What exactly does halacha say about it? So first, a bit of background. To the general, like an overview of the halachas of Kibbud Ve'im. If you're listening online, please email me at j.golker@gmail.com. I'll send you the handout. The Kitzur says in box number 2, this is in Siman Kuf Mem Gimel Seif Aleph. A person's got to be very careful when it comes to Kibbud Ve'im and Moira, fearing them, two separate things, Kibbud and Moira. Because the Torah equates it with honoring and revering HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Continues the Kitzur, Shleisha Shutfin Hein Ba'adam. There are three partners to every human being: HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Aviv ve'imai. Bizman she'adam mechabed es aviv ve'imai, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu mala ani aleihem ki'id. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu mala ani aleihem ki'ilu darti b'neim v'chibduni. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that when a person honors his mother and father, he attributes it as if that I'm living amongst them and they're honoring me as well. Okay. Says the Kitzur in Sif Beis. Ezu hu Moira. What exactly is Moira? Lo yamod b'mkomo. A person shouldn't stand in the place hamyuchad lo lamod sham b'seid zekelim chaveirov. If a father or a mother has a designated place where they sort of stand with their friends, you shouldn't stand in that place. If they've got a fixed seat in shul, you shouldn't sit in that seat. That a person shouldn't sit in the place where it's designated for a parent. For example, let's say at the dining room table, a father has a certain seat, a mother has a certain seat. One shouldn't sit in that seat. Nor should you contradict or be machriya and say that my father is correct on this matter. To side with one's father or mother, it's considered irreverent to do that. Says the halach in Sif Gimel. Now that's Moira, so you shouldn't sit in their seats, for example, in the dining room table or in shul, or even, if they've got a special settee on the couch or something like that, you shouldn't sit there. That's Moira. Covered is different. Ezehu covered, says the Kitzur, ma'achilo emashkehu, that means feeding them or giving them to drink, malbish or machase, clothing them or covering them, machnis or meitzi, taking them in and out, giving them lifts, and it should be done with a pleasant demeanor. Even if a person feeds a parent fancy foods every day, it does so in a very angry, begrudging way, he'll be punished for it. So that's an overview of what the importance of Kibbud Ve'im and the definitions of what Moira is and what Kibbud is. Okay, now, regarding standing up for parents, the Gemara says in Kiddushin, Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Beis the following: Rabbi Yosef, ki havashama kol kared imei. Rabbi Yosef, when he heard the footsteps of his mother coming, Oma eikum mikame shchina de'asi. I'm going to rise for the shchina which is coming. And the Gemara says that even though he had 5 sons who were musmachim, who all were older and had smicha yet, and they could have therefore, opened the door for their grandmother, for his mother, their father's mother. Still, Rabbi Yosef himself wanted to do it, even when he heard the footsteps coming. And based on this, the Shulchan Aruch says, "Chayev la'amod bifnei aviv," that a man is obligated to stand for a parent. Now, the question really is, how often? How often do you have to stand? If they're in and out of the room at home, on a daily basis, it can be numerous times. Have you got to stand each time? And how much do you have to stand? Is it enough just to rise in acknowledgement, or do you have to go to your full height? And this and related questions we're going to discuss now. Now, the starting point is in Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan says, this is in box number 4, in Yerodeh, Siman Reish Mem, Seif Chos Daled. The Aruch HaShulchan writes the following: Dava Pashat to be Gemara. It's Pashat from the Gemara which I just read. T'chayev lamed mipnei aviv ve'imay v'zeu b'chlal Kibbud. Standing for a parent is part of Kibbud Ve'im. Or Pashatu, t'tzarich la'amod malei kumasei. That is Pashat, you've got to stand to your full height. V'gam nira me'a Gemara sham, even if you hear their footsteps coming, you need to stand. That's exactly what the Gemara quoted above. Ein Sham. Ach b'mal sheyesh le'istapik. But the question is this. With regard to your Rabbi, it says, the Gemara says there a bit further on in Kiddushin Daf Lamed Gimel base, that when it comes to your Rabbi, which by the way means a Rabbi Muvok, where the majority of the Torah learning comes from him, you only stand for him twice, once in the morning, once in the evening. Why? Because it shouldn't be more than the kavod you give to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We acknowledge and show reverence to HaKadosh Baruch Hu twice a day when we say Shema, once in the morning, once in the evening. So therefore the kavod for your Rebbe should not be more than that. And lechora, presumably it shouldn't be any different to a parent. We don't see that kvod rabbi is any less than kvod aviv. On the contrary, Kvod Rabbi should be more, because he takes you, as Chazal say, he teaches you in this world, and he takes you to Elam Haba, as opposed to Aviv Ima is just in this world. And certainly, kavod for parents should not be more than that to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, perhaps, if a parent walks in or out of the home, or the room, several times a day, and therefore a parent should be no different to a person's Rebbe or to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that you only have to rise twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, that the Torah says that it's the honoring parents is more, or equates it with Kavod Shemayim, Chayav Tamid Lamed Mipneihem. Because actually, it's better, it's more preferred than Kvod Shemayim. That's what the Yerushalmi says. It's more than equating; it says it's more important. Or perhaps it's if you stand once in the morning and you're in home and your parents are walking in and out and you don't stand on subsequent occasions because you're going to wait till the evening now because you've done your morning stand. Well, some onlookers will see that and won't know that you've already stood, and that's like a Maras Ayin Shaila, like Tosfos points out there. Dibur Maskal in Talmud. This is in the Gemara in Lamed Gimel. The Gemara Tosfos says over there, that Ayin Sham, because if they're not living in the house and they may not have noticed that you've already stood up, maybe it's a Shaila of Maras Ayin. V'tzarechiyun v'gam nirish im darim bebayis echad b'chotz echad lo shach kimum ponov. And it seems like if they're coming in, for the just like normal walking in and out of the house and from one room to another, that's not really what we're referring to. We're referring to it's sort of a significant entry. In other words, they're coming in from the shul, they're coming home from work, or they're coming from the Beis HaMedrash, but not every time they walk into the room. So the Aruch HaShulchan says that it's unclear. He brings both opinions, but he does set out some given. First of all, when you stand for a parent, you need to stand to your full height. Number two, it's not just when they actually walk in the room, but as soon as you see them, even from a distance, or if you hear them, then you need to rise. Now the debate, says the Aruch HaShulchan, is how often? Is it every time, or is it twice daily? And that's the Aruch HaShulchan leaves it unresolved. The Chaya Adam also brings these two opinions. If you look at the last box in paragraph 4, he says, like we just said, you need to stand to your full height. It seems to me that the standing for a parent should have the same din as one does for one's Rebbe Muvok, from when you see them from a distance. Until they're out of sight or until they actually sit down. So you see your parents from afar heading towards your house or towards you, towards the room you're in, you need to stand until they actually sit down or until they're out of sight. Now with regard to how often you need to stand, the Chaya Adam brings both opinions that the Aruch HaShulchan brings, i.e., maybe you only need to stand once in the morning or once in the evening, unless there are other people, unless of course it's a Maras Ayin problem, there will be other people there who wouldn't have known that you've already stood once in the morning or once in the evening. And there are those who say that you need to stand even 100 times in a day, there's no limit to it. So the Aruch HaShulchan leaves the matter unresolved in reference to how many times you stand, and the Chai Adam also brings both opinions. So what is the halacha l'maisa? So interestingly, in Ashrei Ha'ish, Rabbi Yashav paskins that twice a day suffices, that you can get up full height, for a parent once in the morning, when you see them first thing in the morning or the first time that day, and then once in the evening. Rabbi Moshe, however, was strict, and Rabbi Vadis also was strict. He says at least for Sfaradim, but said that Ashkenazim can be lenient. And there's certain there could be leniencies if you live in the same house to stand twice a day. What I tell my students in school is that it sometimes is a bit awkward for a teenager to stand. It's unusual. We assume that it's all based on mechila, that parents have been meichel their kavod, which they're entitled to do. A parent who forgoes their honor and doesn't insist that a child stands, they're entitled to do so. We'll see in a minute. Moshe Sternbuch doesn't think it's a wise thing to do, but they're entitled to do it. And there's a presumed mechila. I ask boys and girls often, how many of them stand? Very few stand. And I said, and I presume that's because you've asked your parents and that they've been meichel. But we assume they've been meichel, but certainly one should try and stand. And we'll see from Reb Sternbuch soon. But Rabbi Yashiv Paskins, at least to be meichel on the more lenient opinion, the Rabbi Yashiv says you can twice a day you should stand for them. That's the appropriate thing to do. And that is certainly the opinion of Rav Moshe Sternbuch. If you look at box number 5, he says it's very strong. V'yesh litmaya. This is in Shuvas V'hanhagus Krach Gimel Siman Reish Ein Vav. V'yesh litmaya. One can wonder, why is it that today children don't stand for their parents? This could lead to a lot of a big detriment. Like I said before, presumably the reason why children do not stand for their parents is because the parents have been meichel. There is a bad consequence that could come from this. Why do you stand? HaKadosh Baruch Hu told you to. It says about a zakein that you should stand, that you will get Yiras Shamayim, which is compared to Mer Shamayim. And therefore, if you sort of instill this from a young age, that children should stand when the parents walk in the room, that will imbue them from a young age with yira, with fear, and with derech eretz for parents. It will give them a certain reverence for them, which is really what they should be displaying. And it will imbue them with derech eretz. For kol shkein bizmanenu, and how much more so today, she'ikakech hachofshiyim, those who do not have a religious perspective. B'naya hu lahafrida me'avihem ba'imr shadoros miskadmin. Sadly, the youth of today will often look at their parents' generation and previous generations with disdain because they are so much more advanced, so much more sophisticated, and earlier generations are not. Avol Torasena HaKdosha. But our Torah, the Torah view is Shekol Drachel Darchei Noam, which is a pleasant, beautiful way of life. Mechayeves Kima La'aviv obligates that children stand for parents. That is the appropriate derech eretz for parents. And when parents, perhaps with good intentions, they're meichel, they don't want to trouble their children. They are sort of negating the honor and this opportunity to instill in them and to demonstrate derech eretz to them. Next paragraph. And sometimes they don't want to listen to them. I had that in school today. A child came up to me and said that my parents really don't want me to stand. Says Rav Moshe Sternbuch, it's a slippery slope. Because ultimately the parents are not listening to the advice of the Torah. That the Torah says that children should honor their parents. So he's taking on like Rabbi Yashiv, that minimally, at least twice a day, you stand for them, and in so doing, you're being mekayim and mitzvah in our Torah. Why take that away from them? Eating matzah, blowing shofar, shaking the lulav, putting on tefillin, learning Torah, these are all mitzvahs, these are gold dust. This is wonderful opportunities. Why not allow the child to have an opportunity to be mekayim mitzvahs? From a young age, from when he's a toddler, from when he's 5 years old, the mother should should instruct the child and be mechanech him or her to stand in front of the father, and explain to the child that every time daddy walks into the room, you'll be mekayim mitzvah, and the father should do likewise and tell the child that he should stand for his mother, so that there should be a kavod and a yira for both of them, for mother and the father. And then it's not like they're brought up with it. This is part of their operation. This is how they conduct themselves, and it won't therefore be onerous on them. This is just how they demonstrate derech eretz. And therefore they will get tremendous bracha if they do it. I remember many years ago, decades ago, I was a kid in school, and it was one of the first times I went to a shiva house. He should live and be well, Mr. David Jacobson. He was a deputy head teacher at Hasmonean. We davened in the same shul. He davened in the same shul as my parents, and he's one of three brothers, I think. There's well-known James Jacobson. He was the president of Monks here in Golders Green, and there's a third brother, I think he lives in Stamford Hill, and they were sitting shiva for their late father, and this is going back 35 years, probably more. And I remember that I went to Bimenachem Oven, and they were sitting there, three brothers who were well-known personalities in the community. They must have been in their 50s. And suddenly their older mother walked in. And all three of these grown-up men, they were in their 50s. When I was a kid, they would probably look like old people. And they stood up to their full height when their mother walked into the room. And it made an impression on me that this was the first time I'd seen it. And it was a very impressive sight. So says Rav Moshe Sternbuch that one should really train children to do this from a young age, and it's the appropriate conduct, at least twice a day. A final word, and then we'll summarize. The Kitzur ends with something very beautiful. If you want to know how to really perform Kibbud Avim, Ya'asok b'Torah of Maisim Tovim. Involve yourself in Torah and in Maisim Tovim, in good deeds. Shezehu ha'kovod ha'gadol ha'avos. That is the greatest kovod that you can give to parents. Sha'imrim habrias, people will say, Ashrei la'av v'eim she'godlu ben kozeh. Happy are parents who have raised such a child. Living an honest, ehrlich life of Torah and mitzvahs is really the greatest kibbud avim that one can possibly do. So just to summarize, we've discussed standing for one's parents, connected to this week's Sedra, Aseres HaDibros, Pashas Yisro, Kabedus Vicha V'Semecha. The Kitzur describes the importance of kibbud avim. It describes what meira is, not to sit in their place, not to sort of contradict parents, not to say I agree with my father or my mother. And kibbud is the things that they normally do for us, i.e. machiloi mashkeu, give us food to eat, clothes, giving us lifts, that often that parents do for teenage kids. It's exactly the reverse. And as parents get older, then sometimes a child has the zuchus of doing all these things. Standing up for one's parents, the sources of Gemara Kiddushin Amud Aleph, Amud Beis, Rav Yosef would stand when he merely heard the footsteps of his mother coming. And that is indeed how the Shulchan Aruch paskins. The Aruch HaShulchan makes a few premises. Number one, that one should stand to one's full height as soon as you see them or even hear them. And the question really is how often. So the Aruch HaShulchan debates it. On one hand, it seems to be that it should be no less than twice a day, and minimally it should be that. But perhaps, as he argues, maybe it should be more than that, and it should be every time. And the Chayei Adam also brings both opinions. In practice, la halacha, what do we do? Rav Yashav paskin that it should be twice a day, that would suffice. But others are stricter, and there could be leniencies if you're in the same house, and only when they sort of come back from work, or they come back from the Beis Medrash, or from shul, or something like that. But otherwise, certainly nowadays one should try at least to not to rely on the assumed mechila, and to try and stand twice a day, as the poskim, some poskim have ruled. And certainly Reb Sternbuch is very strong about it, to imbue children from a young age with this very fine practice.